premise before diving into this video. This is an experiment because I would like to introduce some book reviews on this channel, and I'm not sure if I want to make them in English or in Italian. My first idea was to review books depending on the language in which I read them. So for example, if I read a book in English, the review will be in English, while on the other hand, if I read a book in Italian, the review will be in Italian. This was my logic, but honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not so convinced. I'm not 100% convinced, but we will see. This is an experiment, but tell me in the comments if you want the same review in Italian, so maybe I can record a general wrap-up of the books that I have read in the last, I don't know, weeks, months, who knows? And in this case, I can make it in Italian, but let me see. Today, I would like to talk to you about a book that I do this expression because because there's something in this book, and I'm talking about Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. She is the author of Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which is another book that I would like to read in the future. I don't know when, but maybe in the future I will read it. And today I would like to review this book and give you my personal opinion about it. So let's dive into it. First things first, I found this book totally by chance. I was at my parents' house and I needed a new book as I had finished the one that I was reading in that moment. The goal was to find a Kindle version in English that I could also listen to at the same time on the BookBeat platform. So after some wandering around Amazon Kindle, blah blah blah, I bumped into this cover which caught my attention. I read the plot and I decided to give it a chance. I also found the audiobook on BookBeat, so it was like chef kiss. So my experience was on both reading and listening to it. I found this way better when I read in English because I find myself more concentrated on it, although I had to adjust the speed of the audiobook as the voice was so slow. Not like this, but more or less. This is a point that I would like to focus on regarding the language level, both on the book and the audio version. If you don't know, I am Italian, I'm an English teacher in Italy, and I have my own English book club where my participants and I read a book in English, and it is divided between basic level and intermediate. This book is 100% an intermediate level because it has a lot of slang and some of the expressions used are not so clear, even for an intermediate. For a basic level, it will not be my first suggestion. First of all, the length of the book in general may be too much for a beginner. I know that the length of the book cannot be considered a difficulty in general, but for some it can be. So this is something that I would like to underline. On the other hand, the audiobook can be a great ally. As I said before, the voice is very slow, but of course you can speed it up a little bit. But of course, for another person, this speed can be a huge help because it's definitely easier to understand, it's clear, and you can take your time to follow precisely the narration without missing any detail. But the best thing is the inclusion of different English accents, which in my opinion gives a better experience, mostly for an English student, a foreign English student. For example, we have the English accent by French people, we have the UK accent, and of course the American accent, that we know that they are very, very different. This is a key point in my opinion, because when you read in your mind, you don't simulate the accent, or at least I don't. But while listening, it can also be like entertaining. It can also be challenging because you can simulate it yourself and check if you were right or not. But this is something that it goes beyond the simple reading, but it's something that you can include in your experience if you are reading this book in the English language. But now let's dive into the plot. I would like to start reading you a piece of the letter from the author at the very end of the book. I imagined Blue Sister as my take on sibling stories like The Corrections, Little Women and The Royal Tenenbaums, in which siblings from the same family turn out widely differently. It is first and foremost a family novel. It's about the ways sisters shape each other, how addiction manifests between generations, and how grief changes us. It's also, because I'm me and I can't write the dark without the light, about glamour, sex, and the joy of living. Emotionally, this novel took me deeper than I've ever gone before. It also pushed me far past my comfort zone in terms of research. Bonnie, the second eldest sister, is a professional boxer. In order to write her fight scenes with technical accuracy, I trained with a boxing coach in Venice, California for over a year, and even proudly sported a black eye from sparring to prove it. I also interviewed models from all over the world to better understand the youngest sister Lucky's career as a teen model in the fashion industry. For Avery, the eldest sister, who has an affair with a man she meets in AA 10 years into sobriety, I had countless conversations with other addicts about how self-destructive impulses can shape-shift in the long-term sobriety. Finally, since I'm a city mouse through and through, one of my favorite parts of working on Blue Sisters was how, in addition to New York, I got to try my hand at portraying 3 of my other favorite cities, Paris, LA, and London. This is what the author writes in her letter at the end of the book. It's one of the very last pages before closing the actual book. So you can have a view of what Blue Sister actually is. It is described as a family novel about 3 sisters who live different situations, different problems, and have different ways of behaving in front of them. It talks about 3 sisters and their relationship in front of the death of the 4th sister. Exactly, so they were 4 at the beginning, but one died, so now they are 3. And the book starts with the 1st year anniversary of this death. The problem is that the 3 sisters have to face the selling the apartment where the other sister lived in. Each one has different situations, different problems, and different behaviors, different personalities. The first sister is Avery. She is a lawyer who has built her own rich and wealthy life with her wife in London, and she has a very difficult past because she was a drug addicted in the past. She is described like this: she was born wise and world-weary. She hates authority but loves structure. Actually, she is the eldest, so she feels the weight of the family on her shoulders. In fact, she is the one who always worries for the other sister and tries to make sure that they are safe and sound. She actually acts like a mom, trying to replace the real one, who is like a strange character, in my opinion. She's not considered a proper mom. The second sister is Bonnie, who is the sporty one. Her language is the language of the body. She is described as the gentlest of the sisters, which is true, and it's quite strange because sometimes when we think about boxers, mostly women, sometimes they are categorized as cold people, but actually she is not. She is the one who struggled the most with the loss of the other sister, Nikki. But despite this, she is maybe the only one that has the ability to be true, concrete, and helpful for her sisters. She lived in New York with the family, but she moved to LA to escape her mom because she was not so happy that one of her daughters chose a career in boxing, which was considered something for men. Nikki is the third sister, and she is the sister who unfortunately dies. We know her only from her sister's memories. So every time it's like a puzzle. Every time we have a detail more and we can build her figure. We know at the very beginning that she had a health problem. She had endometriosis, which caused her a lot of pain, a lot of problems, and she was forced to take many medicines. In fact, we understand that the painkillers that she took were the cause of her death. The fourth and youngest sister is Lucky. She is a model. She started modeling very young, when she was, if I'm not wrong, 15. She moved to Paris to avoid all the family dramas and try to find her independence. But the problem with her is that she realizes that she's not satisfied of her life. Everyone was moving forward with their lives except her. If there was one thing Lucky was a master at, it was living. In fact, she wants to stop modeling, but then what? Lucky can be considered as the rebel of the family. She's convinced that to have fun and to avoid problems, you only need drugs and alcohol. Actually, she doesn't think about the consequences of these actions. During the narration, we have many flashbacks, not only to describe Nikki with memories, but also to describe and to narrate specific scenes of the sister's life. For example, there's a part that describes the teenage years, and this part, of course, underlined the fact that even though they had different ages, at the very beginning they were quite close. But then, of course, growing up, the situation changes. And of course, also the sisters themselves change. Against their parents, against the world at large, they were fiercely allied. But among themselves, everything was a competition. All the sisters, in my opinion, are described quite well. I know that Coco Mellors is one of the best in describing the psychological part of the characters, for what I understood by other people's reviews. Mostly because it's not only the author that put the description in a person's mouth. For example, a sister that describes another sister. But we also understand the psychological side also by situations and memories. It is a multiple characters perspective, which I think is very difficult to put into paper. It's very difficult to create a book that has this type of structure. And I think that the confirmation for this is that there were many points in which I hated each one of the Blue Sisters. Each one. So I would say the description was well done, because if I have to reach the point of hating a character, I think that the description was perfectly made. So as I told you before, we start the book with the three sisters in different parts of the world. We have Avery in London, we have Bonnie in LA, and we have Lucky in Paris. The thing is that the moment they reunite, they realize that the problems with themselves and the problems between each other were already present even before Nikki died. This fact, this death, only made them bigger, maybe worse, but of course visible. They didn't work as the three of them. They were meant to be four, and being together without Nikki only made it worse. The plot itself seems quite simple, but of course in the middle we have many subtopics, let's say. We have family, we have sisterhood, we have addictions of different kinds, we have love, and we also have motherhood. So the family point, we understand that this is something that is not working. This is maybe cannot be described as a disaster, but more or less, we are very close. Dad is in rehab, I can drink, Bonnie wisely never started, Lucky is, well, it's a miracle she's alive, and Nikki overdosed. Our family has a problem, Mom, a really serious problem. This is Avery talking to her mom. But the family topic, I think it's something that decorate the book, because the very interesting point is the sisterhood. I can imagine that it's not something that everyone can understand. For example, I have an older sister. She's 5 years older than me, so I am the youngest. And I noticed that some problems between sisters are quite common, not the worst, luckily, but I can understand them in some situations. So all the dynamics between sisters are not something new. I know that there may be some situations where you bring out the worst of your thoughts, the worst that you can imagine, and there is a higher risk that you make the other person suffer. But I know that despite all, you are sister, and this is something that you cannot change. In my personal opinion, I put a limit on this, because I know that there may be situations where you can say the worst thing and the other people can always forgive you. But there are other things, there are situations, there are thoughts that they are difficult to forgive. I'll give you an example. I don't know if this can be considered a spoiler, but in any case, if you don't want to hear it, I will leave you the exact minute at the end of the spoiler right here. Three sisters are in New York and they are talking about the situation. During this fight, Avery admits that she would have preferred Lucky died instead of Nikki. You are too young and stupid to know how fortunate you are, that we don't all get what we deserve, because if we did, it would have been you in that casket, not her. When I read this, I was like, I'm sorry, but this is something that you cannot forgive. Or at least it's something that I wouldn't. I know that this is something that maybe she didn't even think. It was something that it's just came out because of anger, because of the situation, because of stress, everything. But no, honestly, it's not something that I will forgive. Honestly, I turned my nose up because for me, it's not so realistic. I was like, As I told you before, we also have the addictions topic in this book. Addictions that are like different kind of addictions, and they are considered by the Blue family as a way to escape. For this topic, we have both positive and negative side. The negative side is, of course, related to the memories. So when, for example, Avery was drug addicted, or when they talk about the father with the alcohol problems, etc. But we also have the positive side, because Coco Mellors inserts helping groups, AA for example, which I appreciated because it's the positive side, like, okay, they realize they have a problem, so they are trying to solve it and they are working on it. And then we have love and motherhood. Of course, we have love stories, but I'm not telling you anything about them because I would like to focus on motherhood topic. First of all, the figure of the mom. The real mom of the Blue sister was not a mom, and she was substituted by Avery, but because when she was very young, it was the mom herself that asked her to take care of her sisters. There is a very nice passage which is a conversation between Avery and the mom. And this is very interesting because we understand the different idea of motherhood between generations. Of course, the mom's idea of motherhood is something that was necessary. It wasn't something that you could decide on. While Avery is completely the opposite. She lives in a generation where you can decide if you want to be a mom or not. In fact, this is a crucial point for Avery because she has some questions in her head about being or not a mother. Of course, motherhood is also related to the other sister. For example, we understand in a very brief passage that Nikki would have liked to be a mom, but of course, with a problem would have been very difficult, and then the worst happened. But we know this detail. And also with the other two sisters, because of course they are grown-up women, so they are starting to think about the idea of being or not a mom in their life. So my final comments. I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads. I liked it. I cannot say I didn't like it, but there are things that I didn't appreciate it that much. For example, the flashbacks. I know that this is a very helpful method to understand what happened in the past and to better understand what's happening now. They are very, very long. They are very long passages, and sometimes I didn't even find them interesting. I would have preferred something shorter and something stronger, that reached directly the point. Same with the dialogues. There are situations where the dialogue, in my opinion, is used just to break the rhythm of the narration, just to give something different. The problem is that they don't have logic because it's like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, and that's it, without a proper logic. For this reason, because of the dialogues and because of the very long flashbacks, it took me quite a long to finish, almost a month to finish this book. Because chapters are very long. Chapters in general are very long, and of course they have these flashback parts in between, which takes the most part of the chapter. So this doesn't help the fluency of the book itself. I think that the audiobook helped me a lot, because honestly, without the audiobook, I would have closed the book after, 40 pages, 50 pages maybe. On the other hand, I really liked a very specific point. For example, the one that I told you before, regarding the conversation between Avery and the mom. This was a part that I really, really liked. Even if I didn't like the mom's character, at all, this is a helpful scene because you can understand better what happened in the past, what is the general thought of that specific person related to the family, related to the relationship between sisters, etc. In general, this is a book that I would recommend. Even if you haven't any siblings, so you think that you cannot find any connection with the characters. But on the other side, this isn't a book that I would read again in a possible future. Now I'm curious to read the other Coco Mellors book, Cleopatra and Frankenstein, so if you have read it, write me something in the comments because I'm curious. Or better, if you read both of them, Blue Sisters and Cleopatra and Frankenstein, tell me what do you think and if you find any differences between them, because I heard that Cleopatra and Frankenstein was the first one, and with Blue Sisters, Coco Mellors grew up literally a little bit. So tell me your opinion down below in the comments, and also tell me if you like this idea of book review in English or book review depending on the language in which I read it. I really hope you enjoyed this video, so if you did, give this video a thumbs up so I can understand how to move better in the future of this channel. See you in the next video and have a good day.